Welcome back to everyone watching my channel. Our continuous journey towards banking, finance, financial crimes, and their regulations is firm. Hope these topics and pertinent discussions are benefiting the practitioners of trade finances, compliance officer, traders, and international logistics for banking and financial mechanism implementation processes. Global chain of money laundering and terrorist financing is very intricate, and unfolding the layers or chasing the deep roots of crimes and terrorism are harder. Therefore, regulators are vigilant to cope up with the new typologies of such crimes, managing the basics in proper manner. Today, we're diving deep into a topic that's absolutely crucial for anyone in finance, compliance, or just interested in how we fight financial crime globally. We're talking about the Financial Action Taskforce, or FATF, and specifically, we're unpacking one of its cornerstone recommendations, Recommendation 10 on customer due diligence. So what exactly is the FATF? Think of them as the global watchdog for money laundering and terrorist financing. They set the international standards that countries are expected to implement into their own laws. They don't have the power to arrest anyone, but if a country is non-compliant, it can face some serious economic and reputational damage. It's like being put in the global financial timeout corner. Now, out of all their recommendations, Recommendation 10 is the big one. It's the engine room of the whole anti-money laundering, or AML, framework. At its core, it's all about knowing your customer. You'll often hear this called KYC, but it's not just about asking for a driver's license and calling it a day. It's a much more comprehensive process. Let's break down the main components of customer due diligence, or CDD, as outlined in Recommendation 10. First of all, let us identify the customer by verifying their identity using reliable, independent source documents, data, or information as provided. For an individual, this is pretty straightforward. You'd collect their name, date of birth, address, and an official ID number, then verify it with something like a passport or a national identity card. It's about making sure the person is who they say they are. But what about a company? This is where it gets more complex. You need to identify the legal entity itself, its name, its legal form, proof of incorporation. But you can't stop there. You also need to understand its ownership and control structure. This leads us to the second key component, identifying the beneficial owner. A beneficial owner is the real person, the flesh and blood individual, who ultimately owns or controls a company or benefits from its transactions. This is so important because criminals love to hide behind complex layers of shell companies and trusts. They create these corporate mazes to obscure who is really pulling the strings and reaping the rewards. FATF Recommendation 10 says you must take reasonable measures to verify the identity of these beneficial owners. So, for a company, you'd need to identify any individual who owns more than a certain percentage, often 25% of the company's shares, or who otherwise exercises effective control. This could mean looking at shareholder registers, articles of incorporation, or partnership agreements. Let's imagine a scenario. A new company, Global Ventures Ltd, wants to open a bank account. On paper, the director is Mr. Smith, but through due diligence, the bank discovers that Global Ventures is owned by another company, Offshore Holdings Inc., which is in turn owned by a trust. The bank's job is to keep digging until they find the actual person at the end of that chain who benefits from this setup. If they can't, that's a huge red flag. The third part of CDD under Recommendation 10 is understanding the purpose and intended nature of the business relationship. Why does the customer want to open an account with you? What kind of transactions do they expect to conduct? Are they a local bakery expecting small, regular cash deposits? Or are they an international import-export business expecting large, multi-currency wire transfers? This information helps you build a customer risk profile. If that local bakery suddenly receives a $2 million wire transfer from a high-risk jurisdiction, it's going to stick out like a sore thumb because it doesn't match their expected activity. Without understanding the purpose of the account upfront, you'd have no baseline to spot this suspicious activity. And that brings us to the fourth and final core component, ongoing due diligence. KYC isn't a one-and-done task you perform at onboarding. It's a continuous process. Recommendation 10 requires financial institutions to conduct ongoing monitoring of the business relationship. This means scrutinizing transactions to ensure they are consistent with what you know about the customer, their business, and their risk profile. It also means keeping customer information up to date. People move, companies change ownership, and risk profiles evolve. So you need to have a process for periodic reviews to ensure the information you hold is still accurate. Think about it like this. When you first meet someone, you learn their name. As you get to know them better, you understand their job, their hobbies, their friends. Your understanding deepens over time. Ongoing due diligence is the financial equivalent of maintaining that relationship and noticing if something suddenly seems out of character. Now, FATF recognizes that not all customers are the same. You would not apply the same level of scrutiny to a student opening their first bank account as you would to a politically exposed person or a PEP. This is where the risk-based approach comes in, which is a central theme of the FATF recommendations. Recommendation 10 allows for what's called simplified due diligence for low-risk customers. For example, for a small domestic pension account, you might not need to collect as much information. On the flip side, for high-risk situations, you must apply enhanced due diligence, or EDD. What's considered high risk? Well, the recommendation points to several examples. Business relationships with individuals from countries that have weak AML systems are one. Relationships with PEPs are another classic example. A PEP is someone who holds a prominent public function, like a head of state, a senior politician, or a judge. Because of their position and influence, they are considered to pose a higher risk of being involved in bribery and corruption. So, if a government minister from another country wants to open a private bank account with $1 million deposit, you would need to perform EDD. This would involve getting senior management approval to establish the relationship, taking extra steps to understand their source of wealth and funds, and conducting more frequent and intense ongoing monitoring. You cannot just take their word for it that the money is from personal savings. You need to verify it. Let's look at a real-world example of where failures in CDD led to disaster. The One Malaysia Development Berhad scandal, popularly known as the 1MDB scandal, is a perfect case study. Billions of dollars were allegedly embezzled from a Malaysian state-owned investment fund. The money was laundered through a global network of banks, flowing through accounts disguised by complex corporate structures. Several major banks were heavily fined for their roles, precisely because they failed in their duty under principles like those in Recommendation 10. They onboarded high-risk clients without performing adequate enhanced due diligence. They didn't sufficiently question the source of the astronomical sums of money flowing through the accounts. And they failed to identify the true beneficial owners behind the shell companies. This case highlights exactly what can go wrong when CDD is just a box-ticking exercise instead of a genuine, risk-based investigation. Another area where Recommendation 10 is critical is in correspondent banking. This is when a large bank provides services to a smaller foreign bank, allowing it to conduct transactions in a different currency. This is inherently risky because the big bank is essentially relying on the smaller bank to have done its own proper customer due diligence. FATF requires specific EDD measures here to make sure you're not unknowingly processing illicit funds from a bank with weak controls. So to recap, FATF Recommendation 10 is the rule book for knowing your customer. It's built on 4 pillars: identifying and verifying the customer, identifying and verifying the beneficial owner, understanding the nature of the business relationship, and conducting ongoing monitoring. It's a dynamic, risk-based framework. Low risk means simplified measures. High risk demands enhanced scrutiny. It's not about blocking business. It's about understanding it. It is about making sure that financial institutions are not unwitting accomplices in the movement of dirty money. Implementing this effectively is a huge challenge for banks and other financial institutions. It requires sophisticated IT systems, well-trained staff, and a strong culture of compliance that starts from the very top. But the alternative, allowing criminals, corrupt officials, and terrorists to move their funds with ease, is far, far worse. The fight against financial crime is constantly evolving, and the FATF recommendations, especially number 10, are at the very heart of that battle. It's a complex and fascinating area, and understanding it gives you a whole new perspective on the global financial system. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope this breakdown of FATF Recommendation 10 was helpful. If you found this video interesting, please hit that like button, subscribe for more content on finance and compliance, and let me know in the comments if there are any other FATF recommendations you would like me to cover. See you in the next video.